Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is October 28th, 2024. And of course, we're looking at Bitcoin. We're going to follow up with where we left off on Friday, as Bitcoin has hit a key level to the upside that we discussed. Pretty much all of last week when Bitcoin was kind of playing around the bottom side of our pivot zone here. Now, we're going to start with the daily, then we're going to move to the weekly because I do want to call out, with this move up, this very nice move up on Monday, kind of where I'd like to see the week end for the bulls and where the bears would want to see a close come in. So, Monday has been pretty exciting. It was a nice move off of a pretty key level starting last week and about mid last week. When we had Bitcoin move off the bottom side of the actual pivot zone for the first time here on Wednesday, we saw a low set here. And once this low is set, I did call out that, it's a technical higher low and that the swing low needed to be held there at 65,150 and that I wanted to see closes remain above around that 66,600 area, kind of the middle of the pivot zone here. And we actually did see that on Thursday or into Friday. We saw the close open come in. We did get a slightly lower low close with a higher low swing or wick right into the bottom side of the pivot zone there at 65.5. And then over the weekend, the bulls tested the upside here at 67,272, got an initial rejection. Then Sunday broke through and tested right into the bottom side of the run the highs above here zone. And this is coming in at around 68 to 70. Technically, it's 68,300. That's where we saw that swing come in from Sunday's high. And then a little bit of a back test in the early goings of Monday's candle, and then a move right to the top side here at around 70,200. So, this is the area that the bulls need to recover on a closing basis on the daily to start looking above here in no man's land, which is technically around 70,200 to 71.5, but realistically, I'm calling it 70 to 72. We could see swings up into this green zone here. There is a double top over here at $72,000 from May into that June area. So, I would be looking at that as the next real big area above where Bitcoin traded on the Monday candle. Now, of course, it's still Monday for me, but it is the Tuesday candle for Bitcoin even. Man, I'm having a tough day today already. But above 72, above the highs over here, I'm looking for the all-time high and higher to get tagged. So that is, something that the bulls might try to go for this week. We did see that the Monday close came in above last Monday's wick high, which was at 69,500. So, that is a good daily close. And I would in general be looking from candle structure continuation, but it is right up against resistance, right inside of our 60 to 70K resistance zone. So even a swing above it and then back down, while it would fulfill some targets to get hit to the upside, for continuation, I need to see closes above this 70,200 here. Then I would be entertaining moves up to $71.5 to $72,000 as the primary resistance. And then, like I said, the all-time high zone and higher. Now, bulls in the near term on the daily need to hold the top side of the pivot zone here around 67, 2 to 300. And on any lower term time frame closes below 68 to 68.3 here at the bottom of the run the highs zone, I would be looking for that area to be tested. Anywhere below there, keep an eye on this low, 66.5 or so on the closes here, down to 65.5. So, if 65.5 is lost, and specifically 65,150 on a closing basis, if price hasn't already fallen in the lower term timeframes, then I would look for the top side of the recover zone to get hit, or somewhere in the no man's land here around 64.5 to 63.8. Anywhere below there, and that's a pretty wide open area. There is some support, to be found or try to flip, or rather, we saw resistance here and then initial support from this move up at around 62.5, this wick high, where this close open of the last lower high came in. So, just keep a close eye on that. That is something to be aware of. Anywhere below there, and in general, it could try to save itself around 61. 800 or so, but in general, I would be looking down to $60,000. We definitely don't want to see Bitcoin closing anywhere below that 58,863 or 58,8 level, which again, I've mentioned this a lot over the past couple of weeks, and especially since Bitcoin did tag it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. That 58.8 level is the prior cycle's quarterly closing all-time high. So yes, we did see the $69,000 all-time high, but on a quarterly close, that 58.8 level is both a monthly and a quarterly area of interest. So just to, keep an eye on that stuff. Now, I do imagine, we've talked about trend. This is a higher low structure. You could call this a complex low. Complex higher low, even though there is the slightly lower low close in there. Nice higher low swing. Looks fine. So we now have, the lower low close with the lower low swing to the trend break high, which is a higher high and a higher low. So what we want to see now and what we will get no matter what happens from here is another higher high. So we need to see another minimum swing higher low or closing higher low from here for continuation. Or wherever this does put in a high. So good structure. We haven't seen, too much out of the ordinary from what Bitcoin has been doing. I mean, the last time that we did see something like this, we had the trend break over here, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, failure, big move down. Then we had the lower high, higher low, higher high, reverse, and then, lower high, higher low, higher high. And then we got that higher low as it related to this over here on a close, and then lower high, lower low, and then reverse trend break, higher low. So we'll see what happens from here. It's still choppy. We don't have clear breakout of trend in the macro time frame just yet. So, one of the things that I would keep an eye on from here, we should look at volatility. We did trend, support, and resistance kind of stuff already. Let's go ahead and take a look at trend. We can see that we are getting this nice upward angle on the Bollinger Bands for volatility. You can see where some of the key levels are coming in. Upper second, now that Bitcoin is closed above the upper first, that is an area that I want to see hold up on a closing basis. Wicks below, down even to the basis band at the top side of that pivot zone are fine. But the upper second is right there, just around 71.5. Need to see closes above there. And then I would look for a bit of a price replace band somewhere, even $72,000 is an area of interest just above there. But if we see closes above there that can get above 72, then I would look for a bit of a price replace band up here around the all-time high at that 73,835 where the upper third is coming in. If we did happen to see price, lose some of these levels, and especially the basis band, I would be looking for that 65 to 65 and a half here around the bottom side of the pivot zone. But unless it happened all in one shot, I would be looking for the lower first to start coming into that area pretty soon. Looks good just above that 63.8, right around $64,000. In fact, yeah, it's right around 189. Lower second is inside of the just about middle of the recover zone there at 61.8, which is right around the close open here of this lower high structure. And, this was a key area of resistance back here when Bitcoin was putting in this higher low here. Very, very choppy, complex higher low. It did round out very nicely and then move to that $65,000 region before the big dump off back into the low $50,000 with that wick low at 52.5 there. But, things look good for the bulls right now. Fortunes do favor them. Bears have a lot of work to do if they want to push this back down. But, that would start on any closes back below basically $65,000 and lose the pivot zone here. That's when I'd be looking for a little bit more of a move down. But so far, so good. Bulls testing into that 70,000 to 70,200 up here at the run the high zone. Can't argue with that. It's a nice move up. And it's a key area that we've been looking for a little while. After Bitcoin kind of hit 68 here and then moved to 69.5. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the momentum pivot. We did get a nice daily bullish reset. We talked about this last week. The momentum pivot's going to basically be 69,300. So closes above 69,300 will keep momentum pointed to the upside. What I will say is because we have a potential setup that the bears could take advantage of if Bitcoin fails to close higher and move on to the next areas of resistance overhead. We do have higher highs on Bitcoin right now. And if it put in a high right here, right now, that would be a drive of bearish divergence between those two areas. So just keep that in mind. And even a bearish divergence drive over here from that 66,550 high over here. So keep all of that in mind. That's not obviously a death sentence for Bitcoin. It's still looking pretty darn bullish. And you can't argue with price moving up to test key areas of overhead resistance. It's just a matter of, can it break them on a closing basis? Wicking above is fine. You can grab some orders up there, and some liquidity up there, but need to see closes for continuation, and then come back to it. Now, the weekly is pretty important here. We're going to get rid of the daily support and resistance zones. And yes, they are relevant even for some of these longer term timeframes, but I do want to kind of point out where the weekly or how the weekly is looking. By the way, the daily's closing right on top of that weekly higher high. This is the weekly chart. So the weekly higher high with the closes right on top and the dip in there. Just freaking beautiful. Bitcoin plays so damn clean. For those of you that might be trading other stuff, if you want something clean and logical to play for trading, I do suggest you look at Bitcoin. Even if you're like an Ethereum trader or Solana trader or something, it's just so beautiful and how it interacts with all of its levels. And, it makes us right a lot when we're evaluating things the way that we do, just kind of level by level as it relates to trend, support and resistance, volatility, and momentum. All right. Some key points to keep in mind for this week. Bitcoin closing above last week's high at 69.5. Well, I'd be looking for continuation into the area that it's testing now. I mentioned close above here to run the all-time high zone. This is good for the daily and the weekly, but I want to see the weekly definitely close above here. This is this lower high structure over here. We can see that Bitcoin has tested the $70,000 high here, perfectly hitting $70,000 in the lower term timeframes. A little bit of a pullback and then a nice push above earlier to 70,235, or earlier in the day for me as it's still Monday. But in this case, closes above last week's high at 69.5. I would be looking for continuation to the top side here, around this all-time high zone and higher. Now, it would put in a higher high on any closes below 65,150. So keep that in mind. And of course, we'll have clear warnings on the lower term timeframes relative to the weekly here. If we start to see Bitcoin losing right around the higher high structure, previous higher high structure. This hasn't put in a high yet, but the previous higher high structure at 66,550. And then, of course, anything below 65, 5 to 600 on the close open here. That would be, even in those lower term timeframes, be a warning to look out for 65,150. If it does close below, this would be a higher high, and we would need to be on the lookout for higher low swings. And we definitely want to see for the bulls higher low closes if this is going to remain in a position for continuation, more immediately. And that's that 62,800 level. Of course, that's a big daily level as well. Anywhere below there, then we're looking to the higher low swing and or wick, if you like. And that's at that big key prior cycle quarterly closing all-time high at 58.8 or so. So it looks good on the weekly. I'm not bearish on the weekly at all. Lower term timeframes can pull back. And as long as, it's definitely going to be bullish up through, the 66,550. I would caution getting too bearish below $68,000, which was, this last week's close. But that will throw on many indicators that people might use a high. I would say the swing high is set at that point, but for the high to actually be set on a close, I'd be looking for closes below 65,150. So keep that in mind. I'll keep you up to date on how that's looking throughout the week, obviously on Wednesday and then again on Friday. So I don't really have too much more to say. Bitcoin's been playing the levels just really clean. I hope that those of you who have been, paying attention to my analysis are starting to see why I am so methodical and why I use condition-based analysis to evaluate where things are going to go next, right? And I refer to them as areas of interest. I try not to get bullish or bearish or give you the impression of what my bias might be, because I do think that it's important that you watch price closely and make that determination for yourself in the relative time frames that you like to trade. Now, one last thing for the weekly here. I do want to look at momentum, looking good, getting into that overbought zone. Now, again, this is a regular Stoch. I know I mentioned this a lot. This is a fancy paid indicator. You don't need to pick up one of these. Just search reverse Stoch with pivots, and you're going to find a whole bunch that have the pivot number. This just has extra stuff that I like to use personally in my trading, like ADX and DMI and some other things. But in this case, we can see above 65,100. Hey, go figure, that's pretty close to that 65,150 level that would put in a weekly high. And of course, this would still be a weekly higher high, but just keep in mind that is right here. That's last week's low, right around 65,150. Well, that just so happens to be the weekly pivot. So we do want to see Bitcoin close above there and continue on to test the highs and higher here. I would say this week into, next week, which of course we have an election here in the United States. So everybody's keeping an eye on that. But I think, I think the setup right now does favor the bulls for continuation to the upside with, nice higher high, higher low structure. So we naturally would like to see even higher highs, give it some room to pull back when it does pull back, and just keep this little candle, this little bear hammer, at bay, let's say, and because it's very, very close. If it was going to put in a high, it's very, very close to this last closing low. It starts closing there, and then it's sideways chop, and then we gotta wait before it actually lifts off again. Even if it was going to maintain this area of interest to the downside. So, all right, I think that's going to do it. I don't have too much else for the daily. I'll be back on Wednesday. Of course, I'll keep updating you in spaces as to what my thoughts are. You can ask me questions in any one of the servers that I'm in if you do have questions about price. And for those that want to see other coins, I'll have to do a dedicated video at some point for those other coins. Want to focus on Bitcoin? It's going to tell us the way. And yeah, so far so good. If you're bullish, you're probably pretty happy with this outcome, testing 70K finally. And if you're bearish, I'd be a little cautious around these areas, and just make sure that you are paying attention to your risk. All right. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. I'll leave you with a little bit of this accumulation distribution chart because it's just so beautiful, so clean. And I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.